Broadcasting from the KMF Collective Studio, it's time for the Keep Moving Forward podcast. Join us every week as we dive into the stories of remarkable current and former athletes that have transitioned into the real world. Now here's your host, Katie Galley.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the 232nd episode of the Keep Moving Forward podcast. I'm your host, Katie Galley. Today in the KMF Collective Studio, I have with me former collegiate basketball player, executive delivery manager at Apex Systems, and co-host of the Group Chat podcast, Pat McCrary. How are you doing, Pat?
I am well, Katie. How are you?
I am doing awesome. Thank you so much for stopping by and sharing your story with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Pat. I'm super excited to dive in. And so just to get to know your background a little bit and get the ball rolling, can you share with us where you grew up and how, if at all, was your childhood shaped by athletics?
For sure. Yeah. So I grew up in a small town called Mngr, right outside of Athens, Georgia. A lot of my childhood was going out, and it's not the best thing to do, but throwing rocks at cows and finding things to do outdoors. So we lived outdoors, and we lived for just being around others and finding ways to be competitive. I have three younger brothers. So you can imagine the household with four boys trying to find things to keep themselves going. So
Right.
what it did for me, I mean, it kept me in the gym. I always had this knack for wanting to just play basketball and just be competitive. So from time I was, 4 or 5 years old, I was driven by it, whether it was, bouncing the ball up and down the street or, getting with friends or just shooting inside the house. But once I got to the point where I could, play in recreation ball and, of course, middle and high school, I became really good at it. And it was I would say, an outlet for me. When there isn't much to do on the countryside, you try to find things to keep your attention so that you don't get sidetracked. So basketball was that for me. I was in the gym, I'm talking time I woke up, the time I went to sleep. And that was that. I took it all the way to high school. And again, I like to think I was pretty good at it. And it allowed me to, of course, get into college and play at the collegiate level. It paid for part of my school. I met a lot of great people along the way, and it really shaped my mindset about how I view, my personal life, how I raise my kids, how I talk to my wife, how I go about my everyday life. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I think you're so right that sports allows that. It's not just what exists on the court or on the field. It's how it transcends into pretty much every area of your life. You just have to, gaining that perspective as you gain more experience through life. And so, Pat, then, like you said, basketball was really that outlet for you. You just loved being in the gym, loved dribbling a basketball. From that early age when you were 4 or 5, was it just all basketball all the time, or was there ever a time where you had to choose, or as you got into high school and college, had to choose between more than one sport, or was it just basketball?
Well, I was one of those guys to where I was tall, so you always had everyone coming to you saying, hey, you should play football, or you should run track, you should do all these things. And because I didn't know any better, I was like, hey, I'll give it a shot.
Right.
Thankfully, the sports that I played, it didn't interfere with each other. So I did play football. I ran track for a year. But for me, it wasn't about being great at either of those sports. It was more so to get myself better at basketball, if you will.
Right.
So running track allowed me to, be better with my footwork, or football actually helped me to, be stronger. I never thought about working out or doing anything like that. But once I had to put in the hours for football, it kind of, trained my mind for that. So not really having to decide between any, but it kind of prepared me for basketball.
Absolutely. And it's really then, that's another level, I guess, of the training mindset that helps you kind of develop that focus on, okay, my focus is basketball. And even though I'm playing these other sports, it's all in pursuit of that overall goal of, I want to be the best basketball player that I can be.
Sure. Yeah.
And so from there, Pat, did you know by the time you went to high school that you wanted to see how far you could take your basketball career? Did you already know you wanted to go to college and maybe beyond?
Absolutely. I had it all lined up. But as you know, things never work the way you want them to work.
Right.
So my senior year of high school, I, of course, playing football, and was good at it mainly because I was the tallest person on the field, and you just run down the field and catch a ball. There's nothing to it, right? So, long story short, I get to my senior year and I have not received a scholarship to go play basketball. I hadn't received a letter or anyone of any interest. Some of it had to do with me being in a small town, but other things were I wasn't the Michael Jordan. Like I wasn't known all across the country. So football actually got me to college. I had a
Wow.
full ride scholarship to Savannah State to play football. So I took the opportunity to go there, and I found positive in it. It was a HBCU. I mean, it was cool. You learn about what it means to go to a historical Black college. I was like, great, I'll be all for it. And then the coach, he told me that, hey, look, I know you're a basketball player, but if you come here and play football for me, I promise you there's a spot on the basketball team. So I'm like, oh my goodness, mom doesn't have to pay for school, and then I get to play two sports in college? Unheard of. So I go to Savannah State. Fast forward past the football season, I walk on the basketball court ready to do what I enjoy doing. And the coach was like, hey, I have no idea who you are. I don't know what they told you, but you're not on my roster. I didn't recruit you.
Wow.
And it crushed me. So at that moment, most people would have said, hey, you know what, I'll just focus on football. But I love basketball so much that I actually, left Savannah State and I came back to Emmanuel, and I called and I called and I called Emmanuel till I was blue in the face because they were the only school that wanted me out of high school. And I'm like, they're 20 minutes from my high school. I see these people all the time. I do not want to be close to home. They gave me a shot, and here we are. It was the best decision I could have ever made.
Wow. And I mean, again, all in pursuit of that one goal. And so was there ever a time where you even entertained the thought of staying at Savannah State to play football? Or was it, even though with all of the perceived negatives at the time of being so close to home, seeing all the people you went to high school with, going back to Emmanuel, or did you just know, okay, no matter what, I'm just going after basketball?
Yeah, so I didn't have a plan when I left Savannah State. I did not. That I left after the first semester, so I didn't even finish the school year. So I had
Wow. Yeah.
3 or 4 months where I sat down and was just trying to figure it out. Like maybe I should have had a plan before I left, but in the back of my mind, I knew I wanted to play ball. So I stayed in the gym. I continued to work out. I got in tune with other things I enjoyed doing, like drawing and, being around other people and working out. So that kind of helped me to stay focused, but I had to think outside of me. I had to think, who's counting on me? How do I want to be viewed? I was big on branding myself and making sure that, what I put out there is what I want people to know about me. So again, I reached out to Coach Rosine, who was the head coach at Emmanuel, and I called him maybe 40 times before he picked up my call. And I was like, look, I'm sorry. I know you wanted me, but I want to be in your program. And he was like, I don't know. We moved on. We have other players. And I reached out to the assistant coach, and he gave me an opportunity to play with their JV program. And honestly, I had to prove myself. I practiced with the JV group 2.5 hours, and right after I had to practice with the varsity team for 2.5 hours just to show that I was worthy.
Wow.
Yeah, so pretty cool.
I mean, really it is. And it's such a testament to, even if, I mean, coming out of high school, you had that, those opportunities to go on. It was, okay, well, what do I really want to do? And I want to play basketball. So doing what it was going to take, and it takes 40 plus phone calls. It takes proving yourself, walking on the JV team and showing, even though logically that you're a varsity caliber athlete, knowing you're putting in those dues and putting in that hard work. And I mean, I think sometimes it's easy to overlook, like, yeah, I was a 4-year collegiate basketball player, but what it took to actually get you there and the journey that you took, you have to be willing to put in that work. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it humbled me. I mean, I came out of high school thinking I was the greatest thing smoking, and it took Savannah State. It took being, shut down. It took 40 calls from Emmanuel for me to really humble myself and say, hey, you know what? Like, maybe it's not everyone else. Maybe it's not Savannah. It's not, basketball. Maybe it's me. So I self-reflected, and I was like, all right, I got to figure me out. And that's when it happened.
Absolutely. It's then not placing the blame anywhere else, but looking inward and thinking, okay, well, how can I better myself? How can I continue forward? And, look, like, I love what you said. It's thinking outside of yourself. And so from there, Pat, I mean, when you went to Emmanuel and then practice with the JV team and then proving yourself, practicing with the varsity right after, how long was it before you were able to play for the varsity team there?
So it took 4 games. I remember like it was yesterday. I really wanted to show that I was not a JV player. So I played the first 4 games of JV. And at that moment, Coach Rosine knew that, I think he's good enough to be on our varsity level. So when I got there, it was still proving myself. I didn't play the first 2 or 3 games. I was thinking like, man, I'm going to miss the whole season. I should have stayed on the JV team, or at least I knew I was going to play. And then opportunities just fell in place. The guy that was in front of me, I outworked him. I mean, he's a good friend of mine to this day, but, inside those lines, I had to prove that I was the best person for this position. So we went back and forth. I played a little, he played a little, and ultimately he had the job. And then it was halfway through the season, he was our 6'11" center from Barbados. He had to go home. Unfortunately, his grandfather passed away. Wow. And my opportunity was there. He left a day before our home game. And coach gave me an opportunity. He said, hey, here's your shot. You're undersized. You're 6'5", and you're going to be playing against guys that are 7 foot tall. Show me what you got. And I went in and I made it work. And from that day, I never missed another game. And I started at center at 6'5" for the next 4 years of my career.
Wow. And was center the position that you had historically played, or was that just the position that opened up and you filled?
No, that was just a position that was there. Of course, I was lacking in some places. Being from Madison County, if you're tall, they throw you in the post. You don't get a chance to dribble. You don't shoot threes. So I kind of lacked in that aspect. Of course, as my career went on, I built some of those skills, but I used it to my advantage. I wasn't the tallest person under the basket, but I was faster than everyone else that was guarding me. So I was able to create my own advantages. So it kind of worked out.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, knowing logically that you're not going to be as tall as those other guys under there, but knowing what you did have. And so then using those skills, like you said, to your advantage. And so, yeah. Pat, from there, I mean, then being able to, you worked your way onto playing for the varsity team, playing as center, and then being able to, like you said, keep playing in the games through your time at Emmanuel. So coming up then on the completion of your collegiate basketball career, looking forward to the future, did you have aspirations to try and go to the professional level, or did you know that after Emmanuel, your basketball career was going to come to a close?
Yeah, so I don't know what athlete doesn't have dreams of playing professionally.
Yeah.
And I was one of those guys. I graduated with a few guys that had that opportunity. But again, I was really humble. I had a great career. I had a great run. I wanted to go to the next level, but I wasn't the caliber of an athlete that, my peers were. So not only that, but life happened. I'm not ashamed of it at all, but I had a kid in college.
Yeah.
And that kind of humbled me. It was more so, do you want to be a father and have a great career? Or do you want to put life on hold, play basketball, maybe go another 5 or 6 years, have bad knees, and then try to figure life out? And it kind of made sense for me to be a great husband, be a father, and kind of align myself with what mattered most. And it was like basketball will always be a hobby, something I will always love, but I can go coach. Let me go pass that knowledge on to some young kids that had the same dreams that I did, or let me get my daughters involved, see if they're interested in the sport. But I knew that I had to do the right thing for my family.
Absolutely. It's reflecting then, and like you said, looking outside of yourself and reprioritizing, whereas basketball was that main focus. You did everything you possibly could to make that a reality for you, achieve those dreams. Then you just realized you had bigger dreams. It was something different as you came to a close on your collegiate basketball career. So then, Pat, how did that ultimately, as you graduated, looking forward with your family and everything to come, how did that shape then those next steps as far as a career goes? Did you know what you wanted to do after college?
Yes, I did. Great question. It was so tough. I was a psychology major. I just enjoyed talking to people and just talking about your feelings and trying to connect why, a mental disorder was connected to this type of person. I really enjoyed that. But I knew it took more education. Right out of college, the best I could have got was a school psychologist, which would have started my career, but I had bigger goals. I wanted to be a clinical psychologist, but it took 8 more years of school. And again, back to my point, it was, do you push that or do you make sure your daughter is fine? So I worked, smaller jobs here. I worked at Pizza Hut. I worked at a food distribution warehouse just to make sure that I made ends meet, right out of college.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this guy, but Luke Miller, one of my best friends from college, he was working at Apex And just so happened to give him a call and say, "Hey, buddy, I miss you, man. How's everything going?" And he raved about how much he enjoyed working for Apex, how he's making his own money, how, you don't have to be there 15 years to make all this money. And I was like, great. I mean, it sounds good. Like, you're ultra competitive. You and I are practically the same person. Give me a shot. Give me an interview.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, let's take a shot. And my goal coming in was to, hey, get to Atlanta, join Apex, work with one of your best friends. And then that will allow me to focus on, getting that doctorate in psychology so that I can further my career there. But I mean, we'll talk about it later. It kind of took a turn, and I ended up still being here 5 years later. And it's all great.
Yeah. And so, Pat, what does Apex do, and what was it about the company that really excited you and made you want to pursue it?
Yeah, so Apex Systems, they're an IT staffing firm, the second largest staffing firm in the country. And we specialize in placing IT professionals in contract to hire, and permanent opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So I myself am not a technical guy at all, but again, my job is to lead a team of recruiters that are on the job boards, like your Career Builders, your Monsters, your LinkedIn's, and find these resources that we can place at some of your Fortune 500 companies.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, I mean, you're still there 5 years later, even after having this other dream of becoming a clinical psychologist. So I kind of a two-part question, but my first part is, one, for as far as your clinical psychologist dreams, what made you want to do that? I mean, I know you said you really had kind of a love or an affinity for speaking with people and helping uncover those maybe underlying issues, or just speaking with them. So, one, where did that drive and desire come to become a clinical psychologist? And then two, on the flip side, then what made you in this 5-year pursuit stay at Apex?
Yeah, so earlier on in middle school, we were given opportunities. The entire school was given an opportunity to be a peer mediator. And I took that more than most people did. Others took it as, yeah, I get to get out of class for an hour and talk to my other peers. But for me, I took that really serious. Like, I got in tune with other people's feelings, and, got to know more about who they were. That pushed on to me in high school, working with, I guess I'd say I always like to take a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds kind of bad after this thought, but I was able to coach a rec department league full of 8 and 9-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
But my team wasn't your typical team. I had the team of everyone that people didn't want. And those people consisted of guys that had Tourette, that were schizophrenic, that, just wanted to be on the court, but no one would give them a chance. And I was like, hey, put them on my team. I'll take them.
Yeah.
And Katie, we didn't score a single point any game that entire season until the very last game. We scored 1 point, and we lost like 1-53. And I took them all to get pizza, and that was the happiest moment they ever had in their life.
Oh.
And that moment, I was like, you know what? This is what I want to do. Like, these people, I don't say these people, but these guys, like, they bought into me.
Yeah.
They understood that it was more than basketball. It was more than just winning. It was about doing something you love. And that carried on to me wanting to do that. Of course, I didn't get to do it at Apex, but now it's, you know what, like, I don't get to do my psychology work, but when we place someone at a job, I could have placed a mom with 3 kids, single mom with kids, or I could have placed a military vet looking for a new job, or, I just placed, someone that, may identify as bisexual. I just got them a job where someone else may have overlooked them. Like, that was passion for me, to see that I was able to help someone get something that other people may have looked down on them upon. So,
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, that's, I love that. I mean, you can trace it back to a specific experience that you had when you were younger that really shaped that. And then today, even though it's not specifically in a clinical psychologist role, in Apex, you get to do, it's kind of a thing that you never envisioned doing, but you get that similar result, that similar feeling of, wow, I really did help this person.
yeah, absolutely. And again, it's all about mindset.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I mean, I could have went into Apex thinking, hey, this is not for me. I'm just going to do what I have to do. But I had a bigger goal, and I just made it work for me.
Mm-hmm. You're so right. It's all about the perspective that you have. And that's clear that you've had that throughout your whole life. It's shifting that perspective, looking outward. And so, Pat, going back to when you did have that, your initial graduation, and you had different goals, and then, of course, leading you to Apex and the success that you found there. In that interim where you were transitioning from collegiate basketball player into, quote, the real world, was it a difficult navigation for you mentally, emotionally, just no longer being that basketball player?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I hated every bit of it. You go from, feeling like you're on top of the world, guys know you, where, the only thing we had to worry about was whether we were going to shoot a 3-pointer or a layup. Like that's all that I had to worry about. And then real world happened, the career I wanted didn't happen. And I was frustrated. My wife and I, we argued more. My kids frustrated me more. Still did everything I needed to do for them, but everything bothered me. And it wasn't anything that they did. I just wasn't where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, I keep this with me to this day. Coach Rosine, he told me, if your dreams are bigger than those around you, then your life should look significantly different. So when I worked at Pizza Hut, when I worked at the food distribution company, I was wearing, sweaty t-shirts and things like that. So I had to change my mind. I said, you know what, if I want to be in corporate, if I want to do these things, I have to do the things that corporate people do. So, whenever I went out in public, I tucked my shirt in. When I went to church, I put on a tie. Every opportunity that I had to dress and feel as if I was working in corporate America, I took that opportunity. So that way, if and when I got a job at Apex or any other corporate America type company, I felt comfortable and I didn't have to worry about how I looked. I could only focus on making sure they knew I was the right person for the job.
That's a really good point. I mean, in shifting your mindset, it's that, I guess, that adage of dressing for the job that you want, not the job that you have. So where do you see yourself?
Yeah.
And not only dressing that way, but then inherently changing the way you see things, the way you view yourself, the way you view others, the way you view certain situations that you're in. I love what you said. It's really is then becomes all about that mindset. It's so much more than just putting on a tie. It's how does that make you feel? How does it make you think about the situation that you're in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's it.
And so, Pat, I mean, with that in mind, so having gone through that such a huge transition, I mean, one, graduating college, leaving basketball behind, having a child, getting married, and then looking forward into shifting your career path. I mean, starting off and doing a couple odd jobs, like you said, until you started to really figure out what you were going to do next or what you wanted to do and seeing yourself down that path. Would you, I guess, reflecting back, and maybe you have more than one piece of advice, but is there something that you wish you could tell yourself back then or wish you could share with an athlete currently transitioning out of college, out of their professional sporting world, whatever it is, taking that next step, something that you wish you would have known that you would want to share with someone today?
Yeah, I love that. The first thing I would say is, you got to trust the process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it seems so simple, but your parents, your grandparents, your elders, they always tell you that everything happens for a reason. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't mean anything until you get to where you are and you're able to sit and look back. But if I could tell my younger self and any other athlete, I would tell them what it was told to me. Make sure by any means necessary, you're still getting 1% better. I never wanted to be around people that, gave 100% every single day. It sounds crazy, but those people that were given 100% every day, they could never get better at anything. They had everything figured out. I wanted to be around those 80%ers because when you're an 80%er, every single day you can get 1% better as you work your way to being 100%. So as I focus on that, or, anyone coming next after me, just understand that, hey, you may have got 1% better today. And then the next day you may have, fell back 2%. But hey, you got to find those small things that are going to help you get to where you want to go. It's all about the small wins, and that'll help you get to the bigger picture or whatever you want to get to. So
Yeah. That is really good advice. And because it is incredibly challenging, or it is easy to get overwhelmed with the whole process it's going to take to get there. But then having those incremental steps, those small goals every day to reach that overarching goal. And then too, I like what you said, it's I feel like I'm using a lot of cliches, but it's like if you are the smartest person or the best person in the room, then you're in the wrong room, right? So you can never be pushed or progressed if you are all, like you said, operating, if everybody's operating at the same level. Well, if you are that best person in the room, you're in the wrong room, wanting to find that room where you can be challenged, you can push yourself to that actual next level.
Absolutely. I mean, and think about it. People hear it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think about Walmart. The first Walmart was successful, but the second one didn't come until 7 years later.
Yeah.
Starbucks wasn't successful when it first started. Like, Amazon wasn't what it was today 12 years. You know what I mean? Like, it's little things like that that if you trust it and keep going, it'll get you to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But it's the trusting part, right? That's always the kicker. That's
Yeah,
always the hard part. It's like, no, you got to trust the process. Yeah, but I don't see, it's so difficult sometimes to see that end result. But I think to
it
your
is.
point, like the importance of then surrounding yourself with people who remind you of the journey that you're on, remind you why you started and are in your corner constantly supporting you. That's what you have to do. You have to surround yourself with those kinds of people.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. So Pat, with that in mind now, I mean, of course, killing it at Apex, really found a path that you enjoy and kind of bringing a lot of things together. But then too, on the flip side, launching and being the co-host of the Group Chat podcast. So can you talk a little bit about what that is, what it currently is, and maybe, looking to the future, what you aim for it to become?
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully I can challenge you at your level and give you something to keep going for. Um,
Yeah.
but so it came from, I just all about psychology. Again, I enjoy talking to people and sharing some of the things that I've been through and things that others are going through. So when you think about the name Group Chat Podcast, it immediately made me think about the things that you and all of your best friends would talk about in a group chat. Anything goes in a group chat. So that's what I wanted to do for my podcast.
Oh, wow.
But as I got started, of course, as a fellow podcaster, fear set in. And I let the fear overtake my life and everything else. And I pushed it to the side. And I was like, you know what? Well, this is just a hobby. Like, it's not going to do anything for me. People don't really want to see it. My first video only had like 5 viewers. I'm like, you know what? This isn't for me. But it wasn't until, again, I sat back and realized what was important to me. Like, what do you want to accomplish? Is it to make money? Do you want people to hear you? Like, what do you want to accomplish? And when I figured that out, I had that renewed strength and energy to want to push it. So I'm excited to, get it back to where I wanted to go and get back releasing some episodes here in the next couple of weeks.
Heck yeah. Well, I'm super excited for its next launch and to see all the episodes that you push out. But you're right. I mean, it's like with anything, and you get caught up in, man, is this even any good? Why am I even doing this? Nobody's going to listen. It's that imposter syndrome that sets in. And I think, especially if you're a former athlete, you remember what it feels like to be really good at something. You remember at least to be good.
Yes.
You know what it's like to excel and to shine, especially if you went on to the collegiate level. So then all of a sudden, starting from what feels like ground zero, I mean, because you're doing something that you've never done before, that fear sets in. And so you have to rely on then going back to your training, because it's not like you started off being the best basketball player there ever was, but it's hard to remember what it was like to not be good at something that you just chose to do. So having that memory and drawing back on those experiences to help guide you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll like this. I think you've been to this. I mean, though the fear sets in, but on the flip side is ultimately what drives you. Like being at the bottom and not being great at it anymore, that was an opportunity for me to be great at something else. Michael Jordan was not great at the Bejeweled game, the game iPhone game. And now he has like the highest record on Bejeweled because he wanted to be great at something else. So that alone drives me. And it's like, yeah, I'm not the best, but at some point I will if I keep going.
Yes. Man, I love that. It's true, again, about the perspective, the mindset, flipping it of, no, it's not what's greater than the fear. It's what's driving you. Why are you even choosing to step out and try something new? What is even the purpose of it? And again, looking outward, it's more so than just focusing on yourself. It's who am I trying to impact? Who am I trying to touch and help through this platform I'm creating?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, Pat, from there, and I love the name Group Chat Podcast, and it's the meaning behind it of, it's a conversation you would have in a group chat with your friends. So, and having that psychology basis. So with the group chat podcast, what is the ultimate goal that you want to achieve?
So the goal for me is just to give people a platform or, 30 minutes out of the day where they can just sit back and just relax. I want it to be just a conversation, for guys. You go to the barbershop just to get away from your spouse or your friends, just to, have that guy talk. Or for ladies, when you go to the nail salon or wherever you go, you're able to just decompress and just relax for a few minutes. So that's what I want to get out of it.
Yeah.
Or at least that's where I want it to go right now, just to be more of a conversation like thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, who knows? As I get better at this, as I connect with, other podcasters, it may change. But as of right now, that's the goal that I have for myself.
Yeah. And so is the aim then, would it be solely you just having different talks? Would you bring people on in an interview style? What is the format you're looking at?
Yeah, so right now, and it's subject to change, but as of the past 3 episodes, we've tried to talk about, not necessarily the controversial topics, but things that have, no right answer. If Kobe's better than LeBron, or, if you should, have multiple spouses, or if it's okay to do, the slippery slopes or the double standards, things like that, things that there are so many different ways you can go at it. I just love to have different opinions. I just think it makes for a healthy conversation. Again, things that you would go back and forth on a group chat. If you've been in it or a part of one, those can go all night if you let it. And I've had times where I've had to turn my notifications off so we can stop talking about things, but,
right.
Sort of trying to get that feel, if you will.
Yeah, that's, it's true. You can really think about the environment that you're placed in when you're in a group chat, and then something comes up and everybody's just talking about it and putting in their own opinions, their own thoughts on the matter. And not that you're ever going to necessarily all come to the conclusion on the same answer. It's that everybody has their own views, their own thoughts on the topic. And so that's what it is. It just kind of runs its gambit. And so I like that style, that conversational nature of a podcast, and just kind of listening in. And then too, then your listeners could have, likely then they're listening to someone who has a similar viewpoint as them, but then also they're going to listen to someone who maybe could shed some light on it in a different way, in a way that they haven't thought about it before.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fun part is, we talk about some of these topics, and when we get the emails and, comments on other people's thoughts, like, it kind of changed my perspective. Like, I may have thought one thing, but then when I see something from a different light, it's like, that makes sense. Maybe I didn't think about that. And, I'll be the first one to say, you know what? I was wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe this makes sense, and just embracing that. So It's the best part about it.
Absolutely. I mean, I really do like that. What it's aiming out to achieve. And so Pat, now, truly having achieved an incredible lifelong career already of success with inside and outside of basketball, and what it brought you to with Apex and the group chat podcast, what that's going to grow to become, and of course within your own family, and looking forward, knowing that you're, of course, going to continue to achieve all of these goals that you set out for yourself. But I just have one final question that I ask all of my interviewees. What do you want to be remembered for?
Wow. Heavy question. We should have started with that one. Oh, man, that's good. So I've always told my players, I tell my wife, I tell my kids, like, you want to always leave a legacy, because the only thing people will ever remember about you is your name. So I want to make sure it's not, wow, that's tough. I don't know if there's anything in particular that I want to be remembered for, but more so when my name is said, you can think of that one moment where I impacted your life. That's if I can do that, I'd be perfectly fine. If you can say my name and smile and immediately think about a moment that we've had together, I know that the time that I had here on earth, it was accomplished and my legacy was left. So I think I go with that.
Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. To learn more about our guest, check out the show notes at keepmovingforward.us. While you're there, go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter to stay up to date on all things coming out of the KMF Collective Studio. Always remember, you can beat the odds and go the distance if only you keep moving forward.